Hi, this is Nahid, and welcome to video 14 in our growth process series. We're almost at the end. This is the video that will help you understand how to change limiting beliefs once you've discovered them. Keep in mind that everything in this entire series is informed by the guiding question: if we're smart and capable and we have the freedom to create any life we want for ourselves, why are so many people stuck and unhappy? Something must be getting in the way. And we actually came to a conclusion as to what is getting in the way. What's getting in the way is that people are in survival mode. They're trying to get needs met, and some of their needs they can't get met because they have beliefs that tell them that they can't get those needs met. So, my mission has been to clear the path to success for as many people as possible. One way of doing this has been making this video series and introducing my obstacles model, which is a framework for explaining all the different things that can get in the way of making changes in your life. Over the course of the video series, we've gone through every single level of the obstacles pyramid. At each level, we've talked about how things at that level can propel you forward or keep you stuck. And we've provided examples of just some of the tools that we have available to help you clear your path to success at each of those levels. Once we got down to the needs level, you could easily see how not having your needs met can make it impossible to make changes at the higher levels in the pyramid. And once we got down to the beliefs level, we showed you how your belief system defines everything. In our last video, we talked about how to identify the beliefs that are holding you back. We talked about how it can get cloudy and confusing because beliefs are at the lowest level of the pyramid, which means they're the hardest to see. But we gave you several ways to identify limiting beliefs. And of course, most people who are doing this work are in a program to help them do the work. And we have quite a few programs. Our growth program and our advanced growth program both help in this way. When you think about changing limiting beliefs, there's really 3 steps to the process. One is identify them. We've already showed you how to do that. One is to reassess them. And 3 is to relearn. Now, the good news is that the only beliefs that you have in your entire belief system that actually hold you back, keep you stuck, and keep you trapped are the ones that are telling you that something you need to survive is scarce in the world. And you can't just tell yourself that that's something that you need to survive is not scarce in the world. In order to change that belief, you actually need to really discover how it's not scarce for you and how it's abundant. So that is the process that we're going to talk about today. To ground you, remember that you're always going to start with your trigger log, because no matter where you are in your growth journey, your trigger log will tell you about the moments when you're feeling that your needs aren't met. Because any emotional signals, any negative emotions, any flashes of anger, frustration, drain, sadness, all of that, those are signals that your needs aren't being met in that moment. If you're keeping a trigger log and you're able to capture the immediate reactive thoughts that you have when you're triggered, then you're going to start getting glimpses of what your limiting beliefs are. It's usually a good idea to try to get at least 10 entries and look for patterns. If you get confused, though, always go back to the needs pyramid, because everything you have to learn is how to get all your needs met easily. So when it comes down to it, no matter how clear or confusing this is, the bottom line is that if you're triggered at all, the reason you're triggered is because you believe that something in the world that you need to survive is scarce, or that you don't know how to get it. And so you have to teach yourself how to get it. Once you've taught yourself how to get all your needs met, you're going to feel a sense of abundance around that. And that's what leads to peace and happiness and confidence and courage and the ability to change and create any life you want for yourself. So one tool that I often have people use after they've used a trigger log is what I call a comparison log. And what I have you do is kind of take the pattern area and log times when things have gone well and compare them to times when things haven't gone so well. So in other words, no matter what you need, there are some times when you typically feel like you do have that need met. So no matter how unloved you feel, there are certain times when you actually feel okay and you feel pretty loved. And you can compare that to times when you're really triggered because you're feeling unloved. And you can see, well, what's different? What's different in my thoughts? What's different in my feelings? What did I do differently, etc. And that can help you learn how to get your needs met, because you're comparing times when you successfully do get a little bit of what you need. And so you're starting to get some hints on how you can create more of that abundance for yourself. Another thing that I love from the Immunity to Change program. So we talked about how immunity to change is just a different angle, and it identifies negative assumptions, and then it helps you change those assumptions. And those assumptions are basically based in your limiting beliefs. What I learned from the Immunity Change program is this idea of creating a safe experiment for yourself. Because the bottom line is you can't just learn in your head. You have to have experiential learning. In other words, you have to feel that your needs are met, because remember, the whole needs system is driven by emotions. So you can say, oh yeah, I can get love. But unless you really actually feel loved and feel that you're getting loved, you won't actually change your belief about whether or not it's easy to get love. So it is important for you to do experiential learning with yourself and walk yourself down a path where you can deliberately have some experiences where you are getting your needs met. That's the only way you're going to really learn that you can get your needs met. A safe experiment is a way to create an experience for yourself that doesn't make you super vulnerable, but that gives you a taste of getting your needs met. So I was a pleaser, and I'm not saying I'm not anymore, but I've definitely changed that a lot by now. And one of the things that I was always afraid of is disappointing people. And so my safe experiment was not doing something that I thought somebody wanted me to do. Well, so here's the thing. I was literally too scared to say no to somebody if they asked me to do something, because I was petrified that if I said no, they would be disappointed, and then all these bad things would happen, that I would basically be abandoned. And not only would I be abandoned by them, but they would just tell everybody they know. So I would lose all friends. I'd be completely discarded. Of course, this is irrational thinking, but as a child, that's how you think about things. And if you don't re-examine these thoughts and relearn different ways of getting your needs met, that thinking pattern doesn't change, and the fear doesn't change. So what I had to do to make it a safe experiment is I had to take a step back, not a step further. So instead of leaning in to saying no to people, I couldn't say no to people. So I had to come up with situations where I was making assumptions that people wanted things from me, even if they hadn't asked. So I did that a lot. I said, oh, so-and-so wants me to help them clean, or so-and-so wants me to go to their party, or I would make a lot of assumptions that people wanted me to do things. So that's where I started. I started with things that people didn't ask me to do, but I had assumed that they wanted me to do. And I decided to not do that thing that I thought they wanted me to do. And I remember I logged 10 particular instances. In 8 of those 10, I didn't do what the people wanted me to do in my mind, and nothing bad happened to the relationship. And in the 2 cases where I did do something that I thought they wanted me to do, I actually got a negative reaction in both cases. I think that's why it's so memorable to me, because it was such a shock that when I was doing exactly what I thought would get me more love, it was giving me the opposite. And I didn't enjoy doing it. And so that was such a revelation. But that's actually usually how it works. When you're doing your survival strategy, you actually are not getting more of what you want and need. You're actually getting less of it. So it is a big paradox. And actually, the program that shows that it's a paradox tends to be the positive intelligence program. The thing that I really love about the positive intelligence system is that you're using PQ reps to calm your brain and intercept your saboteurs and channel sage. So all of this helps you have an experience of a positive feeling, a sage feeling, which is a feeling of having your needs met. It's a feeling of well-being. So even without going into all the analytics that I've just shared with you about what your limiting beliefs might be, if you work the positive intelligence program, you will definitely move yourself more towards the sage feeling of well-being, of having your needs met. And you do that by doing work directly in your brain. So that's very helpful as well. Another tool that I have loved is a tool that originated from a program I went to up north with a guy that had a belief process that he called the decision maker belief process. This was Morty Lefko, and I think his wife is still around doing his work. But they had this analytical process that they took you through to identify limiting beliefs and change them. It was all analytical, which is why it didn't take in some cases, but it did take in other cases, and it was pretty powerful. And one of the pieces of this I turned into a tool, and I call it the balloon model because when you use it with children, you can pretend that all the circles are balloons and you can pop the ones you don't like. So here is the balloon model. So the balloon model, I'll take you through an example. You use it anytime that you're upset. And so I'm going to pretend that I'm upset because I have a colleague and his name is John. And John completely disregarded my work in a meeting with our bosses. And I'm really angry at him. I feel a strong sense of betrayal that he's, promoting himself at my expense. And I did a lot of the work that we were working on together. So the first thing that you do when you're upset about something is you separate the facts from your interpretation. So the facts of this scenario is that John talked about our project that we worked on together at the meeting with our bosses, but he didn't mention me or my part in it. And I felt very betrayed about it. But the feeling of being betrayed, that's part of my interpretation. So here are all the balloons. I put my interpretation of the situation in the first balloon. My interpretation is he wants all the credit. This sets us up to be very competitive, sets me up to be really, really upset. And remember, if I'm upset, then I feel like I'm not able to get a need met. In this case, my need might be respect from my bosses, right? Or acknowledgement from my peers. So the need itself is important, but what's really important is changing what I believe about the situation, right? So when I say John wants all the credit, he talked about our project in the meeting with our bosses and didn't mention my work. I'm reacting to John wanting all the credit, and I'm giving John a lot of power through my belief. I'm basically saying I can't get my need met of getting credit for this project because John's doing this to me. And that makes me angry, and it turns into a self-fulfilling prophecy, as we've talked about before. It kind of destroys the relationship between me and John. It makes me act really suspiciously towards him. And then John feels that negative energy from me, and he may not know why, because he's probably not aware that he had the impact he had. And so it goes on, but our relationship gets worse and worse. What I force myself to do is try to come up with alternative interpretations, some that might even be positive in the other bubbles or balloons, whatever you want to call them. So here's some examples. He doesn't appreciate or notice how hard I work. So that's also a negative interpretation, but it's a different interpretation. He's trying to look good to the boss. He thought it was a given that I was a part of it. So now I'm getting to a little bit more of a neutral explanation. He didn't think it was needed to talk to the boss, but it wasn't that he disrespected me. He just thought it was a given that the two had worked on the project together, and he didn't think to mention my name. He appreciates my contribution and has mentioned me many other times. So maybe it's just this time he didn't mention me to the bosses, and he may have mentioned me to the bosses many times, and he might really, really appreciate my contribution. And keep in mind that these interpretations work as self-fulfilling prophecies. So even if he didn't appreciate your contribution, if you believe that he appreciates your contribution, the way you behave towards him will make him appreciate your contribution more. I can make sure people see my contributions is another positive interpretation, because then it's like, well, if John neglects to promote me, I can still promote myself, and I have power over that. Again, this is about, can I get my needs met? Can I get my need for recognition? Can I get my need for respect met at work? Well, these last two interpretations are both interpretations that say, yes, I can. And so when I've used this with clients, they've usually been upset about a particular situation. And in that particular situation, as we go through these different possibilities and they land on one that is plausible to them and also makes them feel good, you could just see this visible sign of relief. Oh, that's what John was doing, right? Or it doesn't matter that he neglected to mention my name. I have a meeting with the boss. I can make it clear that we're working on this together. So the key to this tool is it helps you separate the events of a situation from the interpretation, which is based on your belief. It helps you brainstorm on other possible interpretation, which gets your brain in that flexible place where my belief isn't the only truth. There are other potential truths. And when you imagine that one of the more positive interpretations is true, then you set that self-fulfilling prophecy thing in motion, system in motion. And that helps you get more of your needs met. It empowers you to get your needs met. So a very powerful tool here. On the surface, it's just helping you get over being upset. But underneath, you're developing this flexibility in your brain to be able to look at different interpretations, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not react quickly, to empower yourself, and to teach yourself how to get your needs met despite political behavior at work. So one of the things I mentioned at least once in a prior video is your relationship with yourself is key to getting your needs met. So one of the most important things we do in my advanced growth program is talk to people about how they're treating themselves in their relationship with themselves. The good news about this is it's something that you really can completely control. You can't control how others treat you, but you can control how you treat yourself. And you can work on your relationship with yourself very intently for a long period of time. So this is something that you have control over, that you can work really hard on, and that you can see a significant difference in quicker. So this represents kind of the 20% that's going to get you the 80% results. You don't have to sit around and wait until you're triggered. You can proactively work on your relationship with yourself. So why is this important? Well, it doesn't mean that you're on your own. It doesn't mean that you're the only one that's going to be loving you or appreciating you or respecting you. But what it does is your relationship with yourself sets the tone for how other people are in relationship with you. In other words, if you don't really appreciate yourself, if you talk down to yourself when you make a lot of mistakes, you're going to notice and magnify when other people do that as well. It's just a psychological thing. I'm sure I could come up with a better explanation for it. I haven't yet, but I can tell you that it works. And this is something that you can practice and you can start feeling better when you are the best, kindest friend to yourself. When you reparent your inner child in a way that you wished your parents would have taken care of you, and you give yourself things that maybe your parents didn't give you in your mind when you were younger, it really makes you feel differently. One of the things I used to do, because I was anxious a lot as a child, is I started reassuring myself. And I have another client that would do this too. And she would talk about, the giving herself more hugs. But I learned to start talking to myself in a really reassuring voice because I would experience a lot of anxiety. And once I started reassuring myself, the anxiety started subsiding very quickly. So this was actually an extremely effective way of making changes and empowering me to get my needs met. Because as I started reassuring myself, I felt reassured in the situation. So there's a lot more control that we have that impacts how other people treat us, even though we definitely cannot control other people. Okay. So, this work does take time because you're digging down to beliefs you created about how hard it was to get your needs met when you were young. And you're showing yourself how much easier it is to get your needs met now. And this takes self-compassion, it takes patience. But each step you take makes a momentous and permanent change in your happiness. Because you can't go back. Once you've learned that you can get your needs met by doing X or Y, you don't unlearn that. Now you always know that you can get your needs met by doing X or Y. So this is a process that makes such a big difference in your life. And if you do want to make changes in your life and you're willing to put some attention to this deeper growth work, you can get rid of everything that's in your way, of everything that you feel is sabotaging you. So powerful, powerful stuff. In our next video, we're going to pull everything together so you can just see how I put this into practice in a tangible way in the day-to-day work that I have with my clients. Looking forward to seeing you there.